Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the More Devoted podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but
we're back. We're back, baby.
We're excited to be back. We're going to be jumping in on some fun topics here. Hopefully will be helpful to you and helpful to us as we just talk through some things in ministry. So today we're talking about something that's incredibly important to churches everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's called church revitalization.
That's right.
So there's some statistics that are pretty eye-opening. This comes from the North American Mission Board and Lifeway, that around 70 to 75% of churches in North America are plateaued or declining. And 8,000 to 10,000 churches close every year.
All right, so we've got to kind of define our terms, right? So what do we mean when we say plateaued or declining?
So plateaued is going to mean that their attendance rate has stayed the same for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, and a lot of them say anywhere between 2 and 10 years, right? Yeah. That they have not changed. And declining,
obviously they're, and in most situations they're dying off, literally burying people.
So the church is shrinking because they're not reaching new people.
Yeah. So at the same time, all that data shows that about half of the U.S. Protestant churches have grown at least 4% in the last 2 years, which is very encouraging data. But we're going to try to navigate some of all this together. So with all those statistics and all the information about closures and decline, are we in a crisis moment for the church? Or is there more nuance to the story? Is there more to it?
I do think there is some crisis that we need to be aware of. Like, we need to be paying attention to these things, but there is some nuance, right? We live in a different culture than we lived in South Carolina, for instance. Right. In the last 20 years, it's changed significantly. At one point in time, we were what we would call maybe a Christian culture. We were the Bible Belt of South Carolina, and we had the wind in our sails.
Right.
At our back, blowing us forward. And now we don't live in a what we would call a Christian culture. Somebody I know and love said the buckle of the Bible Belt's come unbuckled. And in fact, I think we're facing a headwind in our culture rather than wind in our sails. So lots to be aware of, lots of nuance, but also churches truly are closing their doors.
Right.
In our little area, I think it's 30 churches have less than 20 people in them. And so that's significant. Now, we've got to realize the kingdom, the church, capital C, is not in dire straits. The church isn't collapsing. What's collapsing is cultural Christianity.
Ooh. Explain that to us. What does that mean, cultural Christianity?
All right, so kind of hinging off what we were talking about a minute ago, at one point in time, if you wanted to be a part of, you moved into a community, and you're looking to open a business, where do you go to make connections to open a brand new business?
You go to church.
You go to church, and specifically where?
The First Baptist Church.
The First Baptist Church. So if you want to open a car dealership, you go to First Baptist Church, you meet a bunch of people, and there is cultural Christianity right there. Now, we're not saying those people weren't or were Christians, but we're saying is that to be a successful part of the culture, it involved some level of affinity, affection, or nearness to Christianity.
Right.
And so that's just not true anymore. So the positive side, real quick, is that lots of believers, young believers specifically, Gen Z, Gen Y, or Gen A, are more committed than ever to Christ, and there is a revival of sorts happening across our nation, and that's really amazing to witness and watch. And so we are seeing churches grow, and it's happening all over the country. So Jesus is not losing, but oftentimes a little c congregation church is.
Right. So in terms of church revitalization, there's some words that get thrown out, and I would like for you to define how is revitalization different from a church plant or replant? And you may need to define those as well.
Okay, so church plant sounds exactly like it is. You are giving birth to a brand new church. Never existed. It's got its own DNA, its own structure, its own polity, or the way that it makes decisions and governance. It's got its own mission, etc. It's a brand new thing. That's a church plant.
Right.
A replant is an old church, an existing church that has gone through either decline or plateau, and sometimes have found the need to close the door, but they receive outside resources who will come in alongside that church to see that same church replant. Sometimes it's under a new name, sometimes it's under new leadership, but oftentimes it's with renewed biblical health, vigor, maybe a bringing in of a group of people to help start that church or replant that church as a new church.
That's good. So where does revitalization fall into that? You have new birth, church plant. You have an already existing church that takes on probably new leadership most of the time. And then probably new governance.
Mm-hmm.
And they've almost like turned over the keys to their building.
Right.
That's ultimately a lot of times what replants are.
That is what's happening a lot. And there are a lot of churches that they'll say, we're going to merge together, but we can't have two heads.
Correct.
Right? So anything with two heads is a monster. Right? So a church has got to have one head, one polity, one leader. And so, but revitalization is an existing church that recognizes that it's in decline, plateau, or in trouble of some kind, that says, if we don't do something, we're going to be closing our doors. And so that existing church sees that they have the people to do it, the resources, financially, the building, whatever that might come with it, and they make a commitment to the Lord and a commitment to one another that they're going to see fresh health, fresh commitment to mission, and this new life birthed in the place of where something was dying.
Right.
And so it's this idea, you can plant a church, it's like giving birth to a baby, but revitalization is much more difficult because it's like raising the dead.
Right.
And so that's the way we think about revitalization.
That's good. I've heard you say that many times, and it's always a sobering thought to think of raising something from the dead. And I will go ahead and say it. It's a whole lot harder to raise something from the dead than it is to bring it. Yeah.
That's right.
Start new. So when we talk about the average church in America, the average church in America has under 100 people on a given Sunday. So if a church is small, should they assume that they're unhealthy?
Not necessarily, right? Human beings, there are small ones and there are big ones. Mm-hmm. You can have a small, unhealthy human being and a large, unhealthy human being. And so the size of something does not determine its health.
Let's change this topic.
Okay.
It's too personal.
What are you talking about? So the idea there is size does not necessarily determine health, but it can be a good indicator of health. So questions to ask, right? In the book of Revelation, Jesus speaks to one of the 7 churches and he says, you have the reputation of being alive, but you're dead. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, okay, what does spiritual life look like? And so here may be some questions. Are disciples being made inside of that church? Are lost people being reached inside that church and through the ministry of that church? And is there evidence of spiritual fruit or spiritual vitality? And so those are way better questions to ask than how many did you have on Sunday? Right.
That's the typical pastor answer. How many are you running?
Yeah. And we were at the convention, was it last week?
Yep.
And that's like the second question out of your mouth. Where are you from and how many are you running?
Yeah.
And that really doesn't matter in God's eyes as much as, is it healthy? Is it biblical? And are you reaching people with the gospel?
That's great. So let's talk about some indicators. What are the most common signs that a church needs revitalization?
Okay. So let's talk organizationally, strategically, and then let's talk really practically for a second. So mission drift. They've forgotten their mission. It's the difference between a cruise ship and a battleship.
Right.
I can't remember who said this, but a cruise ship exists for the comfort of the passengers. A battleship, the passengers are ready to take the battlefield.
Right.
And so are we a cruise ship? Are we a battleship? And so that's one way to think about it. So mission drift. The second one is little or no evangelism.
Right.
How many have we baptized? So if baptisms are the only people that we're baptizing are the children that the church already has,
right,
or maybe there's a family inside the church who's having babies and the only children that we're baptizing are those that are already apart, then we're not reaching new people with the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Right.
So third is program maintenance over disciple making. So when we got to Seneca Baptist Church, when I got to Seneca Baptist Church and then you came along a few years later, we had programs out the wazoo.
Way too many.
Way too many. We couldn't do all of them. And we were just trying to juggle balls, spin plates, whatever you want to think about it.
Yeah.
But none of them were accomplishing the Great Commission. So leadership exhaustion, lots of things being done by a few people.
Right.
Inside culture. So you've got a lingo, a language that nobody on the outside speaks. Everything you do is really geared toward those who are already a part, not for those who need to be a part.
Yeah. So I have a phrase that I've heard for many, many years that would describe a church like this as, and it's going to sound harsh, a country club.
Sure.
And they're inward focused.
Mm-hmm.
All their programs are about themselves.
Yeah.
And they've lost sight of their first love.
Yes. And everything is turned inwardly. Mm-hmm. I pay my dues.
Right.
And therefore the church serves me.
Correct.
Yeah, that's so good. But very, very practically, questions to ask is, are there babies? Are there young families? Mm-hmm. If you've got no babies in the church, you are on a short leash. You've got a few years left. That
was your first Sunday.
Yes.
10 years ago.
Yep. If we don't do something, we've got a decade or we're going to die.
Right.
I also think about, I think Mark Clifton says, one of the North American Mission Board replanters, says, do we value the process of decision making or the decision? And so how many arguments have been had in churches, the bylaws and these kinds of things? We value the process of the decision more than the outcome of the decision.
Right.
And so things like that are just practical that we look at.
So we're going to kind of do some overarching to get everybody understanding what church revitalization is, and then we're going to get personal later on. But first, I want to ask you, what are the first steps a church should do if they know that they need revitalization?
I heard not too long ago that one of the jobs of a revitalization pastor is to just tell the truth. And what I mean to say is that they need to show the actual reality of the church. Lots of churches, I can name churches right here in our own town. They've got 15 people, but they've got money in the bank to pay the bills.
Right.
They've got somebody filling the pulpit, whether that's a pastor, a lay person, part-time, bivocational. They've got somebody filling the pulpit. And so on the inside, they're like, we're fine, everybody's fine, right?
Right.
But I think the role of revitalization, or a pastor in general, a pastor is not to play with the truth, but speak the truth. And so we've got to speak the truth about where a church truly is, and the church has got to recognize it. Looking honestly at attendance, looking honestly at giving, looking honestly at baptisms. What fruit has our church produced? And so sometimes that means we've got to bring in a consultant or somebody to come and look because we are so familiar with it that we can't see it. We got blind spots.
Right.
So that'd be one. Second is praying in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
They are central to revitalization. Any healthy church is going to be devoted to prayer and devoted to the Scriptures.
Right.
Bill Hennard, in one of his books, says that a church will experience revitalization because they are preaching the Word of God by the Spirit of God and praying for God to do what only God can do.
Mm.
And so a church has got to be devoted to those things.
Right.
So if you're not as a church, get back to keep the main thing the main thing.
Right.
It's prayer, the ministry of the Word, and declaring the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So which brings to third, refocus on evangelism, hospitality. How do I welcome the community to our church, and how do we begin to become a part of our community once again?
Mm.
4, simplify calendar. Tom Rainer, was it Tom Rainer who wrote the book Simple Church?
Yeah.
How many things can we get rid of and still be the church?
Right.
And when you find that answer, get rid of them and do the least amount that you can do to the best of your ability to be the church. And last is strengthen leaders, build leaders, multiply leaders for the congregation.
That's great. So now let's flip the perspective for a moment.
Right?
If I'm a church member, not a pastor, what can I do as a church member to be part of that revitalization process?
Well, number one, you can pray.
Mm.
Your pastor's prayers are not more powerful than your prayers.
Right.
In fact, oftentimes it seems to be the other way. I
Absolutely.
think of people in our church who it's like they have a direct line.
Hey, I need you to pray for this.
Yes, please. And we can name them, right?
Oh, yeah.
But pray for God to open the eyes of the blind, that we might be softened, that the church might recognize where they are and come to a place where they're willing to do whatever it takes because Jesus is worth it. His mission is worth it. The church, capital C church, Jesus shed his blood and it's worth it. So pray. Second, be an encourager. I have a drawer. I believe you have a spot too, but I have a drawer in my desk where every card that I've received that's been an encouraging card. I've got another drawer
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's called the file 13. But every encouraging note goes in, and if I have a bad day, sometimes I've been known to open that drawer and just read through encouraging notes. So be an encourager to your leaders, your pastors. 3, this one's tough. Prioritize the mission over preferences.
That is tough.
Well, we all have them.
Right.
Even pastors.
Yeah.
We have preferences, and we've got to recognize that the mission of Jesus far outweighs what I think is good, what I like. And so mission over preference. And last, a lot of people get to this place where we say, my church isn't growing. I'm kind of embarrassed of my church. And so I'm not going to invite anybody.
Right.
Or I'm not going to invest anything in this thing. So I'm just going to wait and see. And what we're in fact doing is kind of signing the death certificate before we die.
Right.
And so we're sealing our church's fate when we're not willing to invite people, because it doesn't matter how old your church is, how new your church is, how big it is, how small it is. The gospel is the power of God for salvation.
Right.
In a little church or a big church. So invite and invest.
All right. So let's talk about mindset for a second. What mindset must a church embrace if it's going to experience revitalization?
One that I think you mentioned that might be at the top of the list has got to be, we've got to return to our first love.
Right.
And the first love is not a building with a name on it.
Mm-hmm.
The first love is Jesus. And we've got to return to that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that God has called me to Seneca Baptist to help do is to stir up people's affections for the living God and His Son, Jesus Christ, through the Word of God proclaimed each week. So love, we've got to return to our first love. Second, I think we've got to move to a recognition that we're not fine, but that we need help. And in the same way, Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 that blessed are the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We as churches have to recognize that just because we have money, just because we have people, just because we have a building, does not mean that we have all that we need. But in fact, our strength and our life comes when we recognize we got nothing. So another shift is from keep us comfortable to make us fruitful.
Right.
It's not about comfort. You've learned that, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
That church is not about us being comfortable, but rather, most often in the scripture, when you see people living for Christ, they're quite uncomfortable.
Right. I'm going to lean into that one a little bit. You said, keep us comfortable to make us fruitful. It would be delusional to say that this is going to be an easy process.
No, it's going to be the hardest. If you're a pastor and you're out there, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done.
Right. So being fruitful is going to be hard to see.
Mm.
So how do you learn to stay the course when you can't see the fruit?
I think it comes down to, I think of a few verses in my head. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 says, we've received this ministry by the mercy of God, so we do not lose heart. We've got to remember that we were called to this. Matt Chandler is a pastor in Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth, or wherever. And he said this phrase maybe 15 years ago that really helped me. And I think it defines me also. But he said, as much of a heart as God has given me for the prodigal son, He keeps calling me back to the older brother.
Absolutely.
And so I before I came to Seneca Baptist, I was on my way to a 5-year-old church plant that was calling me to be their pastor.
Right.
And on my way to that interview and trial run, I get a call from Seneca Baptist. And God revealed in that process that He was not calling us to the brand new church plant, but that He was calling us to a very established, very traditional Baptist church in a small town in South Carolina.
Right.
Seneca Baptist Church. And so that calling has got to keep you when nothing else will.
Yeah. So good. So I think the last shift is from our church to Jesus' church. Explain that one to us.
So it's, Matthew 16, I will build my church, Jesus says. It's not ours, right? And so many times we talk about it being ours. Now, it can be ours in the sense that we have become co-heirs with Christ, but it's not ours in the sense that I possess it, in the sense that I'm the leader of it, in the sense that I'm in charge of it. It's Christ Church. It's His bride. He purchased her with His blood. He will fight for her. He will build her. And I do not need to commit adultery with His bride. So we've got to remember that the church belongs to Christ and never to the people who belong to the church.
Right. All right. So we've spent a good bit of time already and just talking in general terms. Now we're going to try to get a little personal. So here we go. So Seneca Baptist has been through a revitalization journey. I would say probably over the last 8 years, would you think?
Yeah.
You've been here almost 10, and any good person will tell you don't change anything the first year you're here at a church,
If possible.
If possible. And but Seneca Baptist has been doing consciously working towards that for about 8 years. I've been here the last 5 of that, which is fun. So I have been able to see God do some amazing things in the last few years at Seneca Baptist. And so when you look back over the revitalization journey at Seneca Baptist, where do you most clearly see the faithfulness of God at work?
I almost say 2 areas. The first one is the culture of Seneca Baptist Church. And the culture of Seneca Baptist Church has changed dramatically.
What did the culture feel? You don't have to be negative, but what was the feel?
We were First Baptist Church. We were not high church, but very, very strict in what we did.
Stoic?
Sure, stoic's a good word. And everybody wore suits. And we all had our best foot forward when we came to church. And I think our external appearance was a reflection of what was happening on the inside. I don't want anybody to know that I'm broken. It was not a place where I remember asking one of our leaders at the time, how do we do it at experiencing the presence of God during worship service? He said, we're really bad at it. Mm. And this was in his 80s, late 70s, early 80s when he said this. And he said, we just don't expect it to meet with God when we're here. Wow. And he was a missionary on the mission field in Taiwan for 30 years. And he was right. Right. And so the culture's changed from we expect to meet God here. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have it all together. And there is so much joy in the family of God coming together to worship. And so there's just been so much change in that culture. Now broken people are finding a home, a family, and the healing power of Jesus Christ inside that family. Mm-hmm. And second is children. When I got here, there were little to no children, and now we've got 20 to 30 to 40 youth and children every Sunday morning.
That's awesome. So every revitalization story has seasons that are heavy, hard, difficult, times when attendance dips, when giving tightens, people resist the change, leaders feel worn out. Can you talk about a moment in our own process here when things felt difficult and yet God showed himself faithful in the way that it strengthened your resolve?
Wowzer. Okay. Yes. I mean, there are lots of little examples. People don't respond the way that you want people to respond on Sunday. Sometimes it feels like we have an A team and a B team, and they just don't. A team and B team don't always show up on the same Sunday. Right. And if you would do us that great favor, church family, we would be blown away. Hey, I didn't know we had this many people at Seneca Baptist. Right. But those are little things. We didn't meet our budget last year or whatever it might be. Those are little. But I think the bigger things that have weighed, been heavier on me is, hey, this has cost not just me personally, but my family. Right. My family's been put in the spotlight. My family's been hurt. Your family's been put in the spotlight. Your family's been hurt. Accusations been made, and they're hurtful. And so there's been a lot of difficulty. And there was a handful of years ago where I showed up on a Wednesday morning and I looked at you and I said, I think I'm done today. I'm going to turn in my resignation. And in very certain words, you said, no, you're not.
Yeah. They may have been colorful.
They might have been. They might have been colorful. And I remember calling our chair of deacons and saying, I think my time's done here. And and him saying, no, it's not. And I remember going home to my wife and saying, Liz, I think our time's done here. And she said, no, I don't think we're done.
No.
And so, again, God's faithfulness pulled us through that, and he would not let me quit the calling that he gave to me.
That's right. Do you remember the advice I gave you that day?
Yes.
What was it?
Go home, take a nap, eat a snack, and come back.
Yeah, I'll see you tonight.
Yeah. So that's what we did.
This is the Jesus way. Take a nap.
Take a nap, eat a snack. It's biblical.
That's good. One of the things that we watched here at Seneca Baptist is how God often works underneath the surface before the visible fruit shows up. So, what are some of those quiet or behind the scenes evidences of revitalization that may or may not show up on a spreadsheet? You might not see the numbers of it, but reveal spiritual health in our church.
I think I'd say we've got a group of people that meet every Monday morning to pray. That'd be one. That's never going to show up on a statistic anywhere.
Right.
The way people sing in worship. Men singing in worship. Those are never going to show up anywhere, but you can tell. Things like people saying, I am reading the Bible for the first time ever. We had a sweet lady come and say, I'm not honoring God with my tithe, with my finances like I am supposed to. And so she cut up all her credit cards and said, today's Freedom Day. And she began to walk in obedience. Those are little behind the scenes things that nobody would ever know. They're not going to show up on a statistic.
Right.
A couple shacking up and end up breaking up because one of them really wants to honor the Lord. And now this sweet lady is absolutely flourishing inside of our church, growing like never before. And just story after story of what God's doing in his church under the surface.
Yeah, and I think you just hinted at it. It's not about the numbers. It's about the people.
It's about the stories.
Yeah, the stories. So, speaking of story, is there a story that you'd like to share? You don't have to name names about how God has used this season to transform someone's life, strengthen their family, or to draw someone back to the church.
Oh my gosh. The cool new one that has just happened a few weeks ago is we had a couple that were dating and engaged, not married, living in the same home. They come to our church on a Sunday morning. Their daughter walks up and says, I'm ready to get baptized. So, okay, that's a great conversation. Let's have that conversation. The two engaged folks come to a discipleship class. They hear the gospel. They hear about their testimony. One of them is convicted and says, I need salvation. He gets saved. The daughter comes in. She gets saved. And then both of them have been baptized. At the end of a service, the couple gets married so that they honor the Lord. And I think that's all of the boxes that you just mentioned. Yeah. A life change, a family strengthened, people growing, and people honoring the Lord, all in one family of three.
That's so good. That's great. So as we look ahead, Seneca Baptist is not a finished product. Amen. By any means.
Work in progress.
We are a work in progress. Yeah. I am, for sure.
You too.
And revitalization is ongoing. What do you see God doing right now that gives you hope for the next chapter of our church's life?
Well, new faces are always a blessing. But I think what's more special is that when the faces of those who've been faithful to the church for a long time are so excited to see what God's doing.
Yes.
And so now they're bought in to that mission. So that gives me hope. And again, what God's doing in college students, we've got college students coming for the first time in history that I've been here. And we've got a growing youth and children's ministry, and that just gives me so much hope for the days ahead.
Yeah. So there may be other pastors listening to this, or church members from different churches that are right in the middle of a similar situation.
Right.
And maybe they're feeling like we were in year 1 or 2. What encouragement would you give them based on what God has done here?
I would say that church revitalization is a long game. Play the long game. Don't stop praying. Don't give up on your church. Now, if you've got a leader that's leading your church that is not leading your church well, you might have to ask yourself hard questions about they're not preaching scripture, they're not encouraging us to pray, there's nothing about spiritual growth, there's no desire for discipleship. You've got hard decisions to make in that. That's a whole other topic.
Right.
But that's not the case in most churches. Most churches have a pastor that wants them to grow, that wants to disciple, that wants the church to reach people. And if that's you and you've got that pastor, pray for him, love him, support him. But more importantly, I promise that if you will seek the Lord and you will get your heart right about concerning the mission of your church, then God will use you to make a lasting impact on his church that he's called you to serve for this season. So I just say, play the long game. God's not done yet.
That's awesome. Very powerful reminder of playing the long game. So if you're part of the Seneca Baptist family, thank you for listening today. This was just a very high elevation view of church revitalization here at Seneca Baptist, and we're looking forward to diving into some tougher topics about that, and we're looking forward to seeing revealing even more of what God has done in this church.
It's going to be awesome.
It is going to be great. So thank you for joining us today for More Devoted.
See you next time.